In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from Earth's bustling cities and chaotic skies, an ancient aquatic species known as the Veilith lived in harmony with their oceanic world. Their shimmering underwater cities glowed softly under the waves, powered by bioluminescent plants that thrived alongside them. For centuries, they had existed peacefully, untouched by war or greed. But now, their paradise was dying. The culprit? A terrifying swarm of biomechanical parasites called the Orcs. These creatures were unlike anything the Veilith had ever encountered. Half machine, half organism, and utterly relentless, they consumed everything in their path. Coral reefs, sea life, even the very minerals in the water. Wherever the Orcs went, they left behind barren wastelands devoid of color or life. The Veilith fought back with all their might, using tools crafted from seashells and currents, but it wasn't enough. Against such overwhelming power, their efforts felt futile. Desperation gripped Queen Silora, the wise and compassionate leader of the Veilith. Her people were running out of time. With no other options left, she made a decision that would change everything. She sent a distress signal into the vastness of space. It was a cry for help, encoded not just in words, but in images and emotions, hoping someone, anyone, would hear it and come to their aid. Light years away on Earth, a planet infamous across the cosmos as a death world, a group of scientists at the Global Space Research Institute intercepted the message. Earth itself was no stranger to hardship. Its harsh climates, deadly wildlife, and humanity's constant struggle to survive had earned it a reputation among alien civilizations. Yet, despite its challenges, Earth was also home to unparalleled creativity and resilience. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a dedicated xenobiologist with a passion for extraterrestrial life, was the first to decode the transmission. As she listened to the haunting echoes of the Veilith's plea, her heart sank. She saw flashes of their beautiful underwater cities being devoured, heard the cries of fear and despair. It was clear, if no one intervened, the Veilith would vanish forever. Elena brought the message to her colleagues, showing them the data and explaining its significance. At first, many dismissed the idea of helping. Why should we risk our lives for aliens? Some argued. Others pointed out the dangers of venturing into unknown space. But Elena refused to give up. She reminded them of humanity's own struggles. The wars, the disasters, the times when hope seemed lost, and how they always found a way to persevere. "We're survivors," she said firmly. "If anyone can help these creatures, it's us." Her conviction inspired a small team to step forward. Among them was Captain Marcus Kane, a hardened ex-military officer whose gruff exterior hid years of pain and regret. There was Zora Lynn, a brilliant engineer whose inventions often bordered on genius, but whose social skills lagged behind. Ravi Patel, a calm and resourceful medic, joined too, driven by a desire to make a difference. And then there was Jax, a charming yet enigmatic smuggler who claimed he was only in it for the money, but his eyes betrayed a deeper motive. Together, this unlikely crew began preparing for a journey into the unknown. They knew the odds were stacked against them. They knew failure could mean doom, not just for the Veilith, but possibly for Earth as well if the Orcs spread further. But as they stood together in the dimly lit briefing room, staring at holographic maps of distant stars, one thing became clear. This mission wasn't just about saving another species. It was about proving that even in the darkest moments, hope could still shine through. And so, with determination burning in their hearts, they boarded the starship Aegis, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Little did they know, their actions would ripple across the galaxy, changing the fate of 2 worlds, and perhaps the universe itself. The mission to save the Veilith was no ordinary task. It required more than just advanced technology or scientific expertise. It demanded individuals who could think on their feet, adapt to chaos, and survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. Dr. Elena Vasquez knew this better than anyone. She had spent days reviewing personnel files, searching for people with unique skills and unshakable determination. What she found was a group of misfits, each carrying their own baggage, but united by one thing: an unyielding will to push forward. Captain Marcus Kane was the first name on her list. A former military officer with years of combat experience, Marcus had earned a reputation for leading teams through impossible situations, but his career ended abruptly after a failed mission left him scared, both physically and emotionally. Now, he worked as a private security consultant, drifting from job to job without purpose. When Alina approached him, he initially refused, claiming he was done risking his life for causes that didn't matter. But something about her conviction struck a chord. "If you're wrong," he warned, "we're all dead." Despite his gruff demeanor, he agreed to join. Next came Zara Lynn, a prodigy whose brilliance often overshadowed her awkwardness. Zara had always been more comfortable around machines than people. Her inventions had revolutionized space travel, yet her inability to connect with others made her an outcast among her peers. When Alina explained the mission's technical challenges, Zora's eyes lit up with excitement. For once, she felt like her talents might actually make a difference. "I'll do it," she said simply, already sketching designs for modifications to the starship Aegis. Ravi Patel, the team's medic, joined reluctantly at first. A calm and compassionate man, Ravi had dedicated his life to healing others, whether it was tending to wounded soldiers in war zones or treating victims of natural disasters. He wasn't sure how much help he could offer against biomechanical monsters, but Alina assured him that survival depended not just on fighting, but also on keeping everyone alive. "You'll be our lifeline," she told him, and those words stuck with him. Then there was Jax, a wild card if ever there was one, a former smuggler with a knack for getting into and out of trouble. Jax claimed his interest in the mission was purely financial. "Pay me enough, and I'll get you where you need to go," he joked during their meeting. Yet beneath his cocky grin lay a sharp mind and invaluable knowledge of alien tech. His connections in the black market had given him access to gadgets and tools most scientists could only dream of. Though skeptical of his motives, Alina decided they couldn't afford to turn him away. As the crew gathered aboard the Aegis, tensions simmered just below the surface. Marcus barked orders, trying to assert authority, while Zara buried herself in her work, avoiding eye contact. Ravi attempted to mediate conflicts, offering quiet reassurance, but even he struggled to bridge the growing divide. Jax, meanwhile, leaned casually against a wall, smirking as he watched the drama unfold. "Looks like we're gonna have a fun ride," he quipped, earning a glare from Marcus. Despite their differences, they shared a common goal: to save the Vailith, and perhaps themselves in the process. Each member brought something vital to the table, even if they didn't realize it yet. As the ship prepared for launch, Alina addressed them one last time. "This isn't just about aliens or Earth," she said firmly. "It's about proving that hope can exist, even in the darkest corners of the universe." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For now, they were strangers bound by necessity. But as the engines roared to life and the Aegis ascended toward the stars, a flicker of unity began to take root. Whatever awaited them beyond Earth's atmosphere, they would face it together, or not at all. The journey to the Vailith homeworld was anything but smooth. The starship Aegis cut through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek hull glinting faintly under the light of distant stars. Inside, the crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship running and prepare for what lay ahead. But as they ventured deeper into uncharted territory, it became clear that this mission would test them in ways none of them had anticipated. Their first challenge came early, a massive asteroid field blocking their path. Captain Marcus Kane gripped the controls tightly, his jaw clenched as he maneuvered the ship through the chaotic maze of spinning rocks. Zara Lynn sat nearby, monitoring the navigation systems and shouting out warnings whenever an asteroid loomed too close. 3 degrees to port, she called out, her voice tinged with panic. Marcus adjusted the course just in time, narrowly avoiding a collision that would have torn the ship apart. As they emerged from the asteroid field, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. But their respite was short-lived. A sudden radiation storm engulfed the ship, forcing Jax to scramble to reinforce the shields. Sparks flew from a console as he worked, his hands moving quickly despite the chaos around him. "We're not gonna last long if these shields fail," he muttered, sweat dripping down his face. Ravi handed him tools without being asked, their teamwork seamless even in the heat of the moment. Despite these obstacles, the crew pressed on, driven by the knowledge that every second counted for the Vaylith. Along the way, they passed remnants of other civilizations destroyed by the Vorax. Derelict ships floating silently in the void, their skeletal frames twisted and broken. Dr. Elena Vasquez studied the wreckage with a heavy heart, piecing together fragments of data from the ship's logs. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. "These weren't accidents," she said grimly during a briefing. "The Vorax were created as weapons by an ancient empire, and when they turned on their creators, entire worlds fell." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "If we don't stop them now, they'll keep spreading until there's nothing left." Her revelation sparked heated debate among the crew. Marcus argued that helping the Vaylith was too risky. Earth had its own problems, and risking humanity's safety for aliens seemed reckless. Zara countered that turning back wasn't an option. They'd already committed to the mission, and failure meant dooming an entire species. Even Jax, who usually stayed detached, chimed in. "Look, I didn't sign up to save the galaxy," he admitted. "But if we bail now, what does that say about us? That we're cowards." Ravi remained quiet throughout the argument, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the rising tension. When the voices finally died down, he spoke softly but firmly. "This isn't just about the Vaylith or Earth," he said. "It's about doing what's right. If we can help, shouldn't we try?" His words struck a nerve, silencing the room. For all their differences, the crew shared a deep-seated belief in survival, not just for themselves, but for others. They couldn't abandon the Vaylith, no matter how daunting the odds. With renewed resolve, they continued onward. Days later, while scanning a particularly dense region of space, Zara spotted something unusual, a lone alien vessel drifting aimlessly. Its design was unfamiliar, its surface scarred by battle damage. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to investigate. Inside the derelict ship, they found eerie silence. The air was cold, the corridors dark and lifeless. As they explored, they uncovered logs detailing the Vorax's origins, the same information Elena had pieced together earlier. But there was more. Schematics for advanced weaponry and defenses, left behind by the ship's doomed crew. This discovery gave them hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could use this knowledge to turn the tide against the Vorax. As they returned to the Aegis, the crew felt a mix of dread and determination. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they were ready, or so they thought. Little did they know, their greatest challenges were still waiting beyond the horizon. The Aegis finally reached the Vaylith homeworld, a planet shrouded in an eerie glow. From orbit, the crew could see the devastation wrought by the Vorax. Once vibrant coral reefs now lay lifeless beneath murky waters, their colors drained as if sucked dry by some cosmic force. Toxic plumes rose from the depths, choking the atmosphere and casting long shadows over what had once been a thriving aquatic paradise. It was a haunting sight, one that filled the crew with both sorrow and resolve. As they prepared to descend, Dr. Elena Vasquez couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She had convinced these people to come here, to risk their lives for strangers. But now she wondered if she'd made the right choice. "We're not just saving them," she reminded herself quietly. "We're proving something about us." The landing process was tense but smooth, thanks to Zora's modifications to the ship's stabilizers. They touched down near one of the few remaining Vaylith settlements, a cluster of glowing domes submerged under shallow waters. Stepping out of the Aegis, the crew donned specialized diving suits equipped with translators and oxygen filters. The water around them shimmered faintly, though the beauty was marred by the wreckage scattered across the seabed. Queen Silora greeted them personally, her translucent form gliding gracefully through the water. Her voice resonated softly in their helmets, translated into calm, melodic tones. "You have come far to help us," she said, bowing slightly. "For this, we are eternally grateful." Alina stepped forward, her heart swelling at the sight of the Queen's regal yet weary presence. "Your message reached us when it mattered most," she replied. "Tell us everything you know about the Vorax. Together, we'll find a way to stop them." Over the next several hours, Silora shared the grim details of the invasion. The Vorax attacked without warning, consuming entire ecosystems within days. The Veilith tried to fight back using sonic weapons and barriers, but the biomechanical creatures adapted too quickly. Worse still, the Vorax seemed drawn to areas rich in biodiversity, targeting the very essence of the Veilith's existence. Captain Marcus Kane listened intently, his usual gruffness softened by the gravity of the situation. "If brute force won't work, then we need another approach," he said firmly. Turning to Zara, he added, "What do you think? Can we use Earth's predators against these things?" Zara hesitated before responding. "It's risky," she admitted, "but it might be our best shot. If we release apex predators like saltwater crocodiles or Komodo dragons, creatures evolve to survive in harsh environments. They could disrupt the Vorax's feeding patterns, maybe even slow them down." The idea sparked debate among the crew. Ravi raised concerns about introducing Earth's wildlife to an alien ecosystem. "We don't know how it'll affect the Veilith's environment," he warned. "What if we cause more harm than good?" Jack shrugged nonchalantly. "Better than sitting here doing nothing," he said. "Besides, Earth's beasts are tougher than they look. Trust me, I've seen them in action." Despite the risks, Alina agreed with Zora. Time was running out, and desperate times called for desperate measures. With Silora's reluctant approval, they decided to proceed. The Aegis carried cryogenically frozen specimens of Earth's deadliest animals, brought along as part of a contingency plan. Now those creatures would play a pivotal role in humanity's first interstellar battle. As the crew worked together to prepare the predators for deployment, Alina found herself bonding with Silora. The Queen spoke of her people's deep connection to their world, their songs, their rituals, their love for the oceans that sustain them. "This is more than our home," Silora explained. "It is who we are. To lose it is to lose ourselves." Alina nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She realized then that this mission wasn't just about saving the species, it was about preserving something far greater: hope. Hope that even in the face of overwhelming odds, life could endure. And perhaps through their actions, humanity could prove itself worthy of that hope. With preparations complete, the crew stood ready to unleash chaos upon the invaders. As they activated the release mechanism, Alina whispered a silent prayer for the Veilith, for Earth, and for everyone counting on them to succeed. The plan was simple, or at least as simple as any plan involving Earth's deadliest creatures could be. The crew released the genetically modified apex predators into the Veilith seabed, their movements tracked by sensors embedded in their bodies. Saltwater crocodiles with enhanced speed and Komodo dragons bred for increased aggression swam through the murky waters, their instincts primed to hunt. For a moment, everything seemed eerily quiet, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Then it began. The Vorax detected the biosignatures almost immediately. Drawn by the unfamiliar yet tantalizing signals, they surged toward the new arrivals like a metallic tide. At first, the biomechanical parasites underestimated their prey. They lunged forward, expecting easy kills, but what they encountered was anything but. A massive saltwater crocodile snapped its jaws around a cluster of Vorax, crushing them with brute force before whipping its tail to scatter others. Nearby, a Komodo dragon lashed out with venomous precision, tearing apart several smaller Vorax while dodging their counterattacks. The water churned violently as predator clashed with parasite, creating a chaotic battlefield illuminated only by flashes of bioluminescence. Captain Marcus Kane watched the carnage unfold on the monitors aboard the Aegis, his expression unreadable. "It's working," he muttered, though his tone carried no trace of triumph, only grim determination. Beside him, Zora Lynn typed furiously at her console, adjusting parameters to ensure the predators stayed within range of the Vorax hive clusters. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She hadn't slept in over 24 hours, pouring all her energy into making this gamble pay off. But even as the strategy appeared successful, cracks began to show. The Vorax weren't mindless beasts. They adapted quickly, learning from each encounter. Some formed tight formations to overwhelm individual predators, while others deployed razor-sharp appendages to slice through flesh. One by one, the earth animals fell, their bodies sinking lifelessly to the seabed. Ravi Patel monitored the vitals of the remaining creatures, his face pale under the dim lights of the ship. "We're losing too many," he said quietly. "At this rate, they won't last much longer." Jax leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So what's plan B?" he asked, his usual sarcasm tinged with unease. "Because I'm pretty sure hope for the best isn't gonna cut it." Alina Vasquez clenched her fists, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. She had believed in this plan, trusted that humanity's ingenuity would tip the scales. But now doubt crept in, whispering insidious thoughts. What if they'd made a mistake? What if unleashing these creatures caused more harm than good? Before despair could take hold, Zara spoke up. "There's still time," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "If we can disrupt the Vorax's communication network, their hive mind, we might be able to disable them completely." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You mean build some kind of jamming device?" "Exactly," Zara replied. "Their reliance on electromagnetic signals is their biggest weakness. If we overload their frequencies, we can shut them down en masse." The idea reignited hope among the crew. Ravi immediately began sketching designs for the device, his medical expertise lending insight into how biological systems interacted with technology. Jax scavenged parts from both the Aegis and the derelict alien vessel it explored earlier, piecing together components that could amplify the signal. Meanwhile, Alina coordinated with Queen Silora, explaining the new plan and asking for the Valeth's assistance in deploying the device near the Vorax's central hive. As the team worked tirelessly, the battle outside raged on. The surviving predators fought valiantly, buying precious time for the humans to complete their task. Though battered and outnumbered, they refused to give up, a reflection of the very resilience that defined Earth itself. Finally, after hours of relentless effort, the device was ready. It was crude, hastily assembled, and far from perfect, but it was their only chance. As Zora powered it up, a faint hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Let's see if we can turn the tide." With a final adjustment, Zora activated the device. A pulse of energy rippled outward, invisible but powerful, disrupting the Vorax's coordination. For the first time since the invasion began, the parasites hesitated, their movements faltering as their connection to the hive mind shattered. The crew held their breath, watching as chaos unfolded, not among their allies this time, but among their enemies. The disruptor device hummed with energy, its effects rippling through the water like an invisible wave. The Vorax, once a relentless tide of destruction, now floundered in confusion. Without their hive mind to guide them, they became disoriented, their movements erratic and uncoordinated. Some collided into each other, while others simply floated aimlessly, their biomechanical bodies twitching as if caught in a silent storm. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. Back aboard the Aegis, the crew exhaled collectively, though no one dared to celebrate just yet. Zara Lynn slumped back in her chair, her hands trembling from exhaustion, but her eyes alight with cautious optimism. "It's working," she whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. Ravi Patel nodded, his face pale but determined as he monitored the readings on his console. "Their signals are weakening," he confirmed. "If we keep this up, we might actually pull this off." But the victory wasn't without cost. The Earth predators that had been released earlier were nearly wiped out, their lifeless forms scattered across the seabed. Captain Marcus Kane stared at the monitors, his jaw clenched tightly as he watched the remnants of their desperate gamble sink into the depths. "We've lost too much already," he muttered under his breath. "Let's make sure it wasn't for nothing." Dr. Elena Vasquez turned to him, her expression resolute. "This is only the beginning," she said firmly. "The disruptor can disable them temporarily, but it won't destroy them completely. We need something more permanent, a way to neutralize the threat once and for all." Jax, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "So what's next?" "Another brilliant plan involving Earth's deadliest creatures." He smirked, though the joke lacked its usual bite. Even he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Elena shook her head. "No more gambles. This time, we finish it." The crew gathered around a holographic map of the Vailith homeworld, plotting their next move. The central hive cluster, the heart of the Vorax operation, was still intact, buried deep beneath layers of coral and rock. It pulsed faintly with electromagnetic energy, a beacon calling to the scattered parasites. If they could destroy it, they could sever the Vorax's ability to regenerate or adapt further. "We'll have to go in ourselves," Marcus declared after a long pause. "The disruptor's signal won't reach that far unless we plant it directly at the source." Zora frowned, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she calculated the risks. "Getting close enough will be dangerous," she warned. "The Vorax may be confused now, but they're not defenseless. And once we get inside the hive, who knows what kind of traps or defenses we'll face." Ravi spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "Then we prepare for the worst. We bring everything we've got. Weapons, tools, medical supplies. Whatever it takes to survive." Jax leaned forward, his sharp eyes scanning the map. "And maybe a few surprises of our own," he added with a sly grin. "I've been tinkering with some gadgets from the derelict ship. Might come in handy when things get messy." As the crew worked together to assemble their gear, tensions eased slightly. Despite the looming danger, there was a sense of unity among them now, a shared understanding that they were stronger together than apart. Each member brought something vital to the mission. Marcus's leadership, Zora's ingenuity, Ravi's resourcefulness, Jax's cunning, and Elena's unwavering determination. Before leaving the Aegis, Elena took a moment to speak with Queen Silora. The Vailith leader glided gracefully toward her translucent form glowing softly in the dim light. "You have given us hope," Silora said, her melodic voice filled with gratitude. "Whatever happens next, know that your courage will never be forgotten." Elena nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "We're not done yet," she replied. "Stay safe until we return." With those words, the crew donned their diving suits once more and descended into the depths. The journey to the hive cluster was treacherous, the waters dark and oppressive. Bioluminescent flashes illuminated jagged rocks and twisted coral formations, casting eerie shadows that danced across their path. Every movement felt deliberate, every sound amplified by the crushing silence of the ocean. As they approached the hive, the air, or rather, the water, seemed heavier, charged with an almost palpable sense of dread. The entrance loomed before them, a gaping maw lined with jagged metallic teeth. Inside, the pulsating glow of the hive core beckoned, a sinister reminder of the task ahead. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Let's end this." One by one, they entered the hive, stepping into the unknown. What awaited them inside was anyone's guess, but failure was no longer an option. The interior of the Vorax hive was a nightmare brought to life. The walls pulsed faintly with an eerie blue light, as if the structure itself were alive. Strange, Organic tendrils snaked across the ceiling and floor, twitching in response to the crew's presence. The air, or what passed for it underwater, was thick with a metallic tang that made their suits' filters strain to keep it breathable. Every step they took echoed unnaturally, amplified by the hive's hollow chambers. Captain Marcus Kane led the way, his weapon drawn, and his eyes scanning every shadow. "Stay sharp," he muttered over the comms. "This place is crawling with traps." Behind him, Zara Lynn clutched her tablet tightly, using its sensors to map the labyrinthine corridors. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to focus. "The core is straight ahead," she whispered, her voice barely audible even through the comms. "But there's something else moving around us." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shifted. Dozens of dormant Vorax units sprang to life, their biomechanical limbs unfolding like grotesque flowers. They swarmed toward the crew, their movements jerky but purposeful. Despite being disconnected from the hive mind, they still retained enough instinct to attack anything that threatened their nest. "Here we go again," Jax shouted, pulling out a modified plasma pistol he'd scavenged from the derelict ship. He fired a burst of energy at the nearest Vorax, sending it spiraling backward. Its body sparked violently before collapsing into motionless scrap. "These babies pack a punch," he added with a grin, though his bravado couldn't mask the tension in his voice. Ravi Patil stayed close to Elena Vasquez, his medical kit at the ready. When one of the Vorax lunged at Zara, Ravi acted quickly, deploying a small electromagnetic pulse device he'd prepared earlier. The pulse stunned the creature long enough for Zara to scramble out of harm's way. "Thanks," she gasped, her face pale but resolute. The battle raged on, the crew fighting desperately to hold their ground. Each member played their part. Marcus barked orders while covering their backs. Elena used her knowledge of xenobiology to identify weak points in the Vorax's anatomy. And Jax unleashed creative tactics with his improvised gadgets. But despite their efforts, the numbers were overwhelming. "We can't keep this up forever," Marcus growled, firing another round into the mass of attackers. His ammo was running low, and fatigue was setting in. Sweat dripped down his face, stinging his eyes, but he refused to falter. Elena glanced at the disruptor device strapped to Zara's back. It was their only hope, but reaching the core seemed impossible with so many Vorax blocking their path. Then she noticed something, a pattern in the creature's movements. "They're guarding the core," she exclaimed. "If we can distract them, someone might be able to slip past." Marcus nodded grimly. "I'll stay behind and hold them off. Get the device to the core." "No," Elena protested. "We need you." "This isn't up for debate," Marcus interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You're the reason we're here. Finish the mission." Before anyone could respond, Marcus charged forward, drawing the attention of the Vorax swarm. His shouts echoed through the hive as he unleashed everything he had, buying precious seconds for the others to move ahead. Tears welled up in Elena's eyes, but she forced herself to focus. There would be time to grieve later, if they survived. With renewed determination, the remaining crew pushed onward. Zara navigated the final stretch to the core, her hands shaking as she activated the disruptor. The device hummed louder, its energy building until it reached a critical point. "Stand back," she yelled, pressing the activation button. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the device, flooding the hive with waves of electromagnetic interference. The Vorax convulsed violently, their bodies collapsing into lifeless heaps. The pulsating glow of the core dimmed, then extinguished entirely. For a moment, silence reigned. The crew stood frozen, unsure if it was truly over. Then, through the comms, came Marcus's strained voice. "Did it work?" Elena let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah," she replied. "It worked." But as they regrouped, the weight of their losses settled heavily upon them. Marcus had sacrificed himself to ensure their success, and the cost of victory was etched into each of their faces. Yet amidst the sorrow, there was also pride, a shared understanding that they had done something extraordinary. Together, they had faced the impossible and prevailed. Now, all that remained was to return to the surface and begin the long process of healing. The crew emerged from the Vorax hive battered but victorious. The once pulsating core was now a silent, lifeless husk, its glow extinguished like a dying star. As they swam back toward the surface, the water around them felt lighter, almost peaceful, as if the ocean itself could breathe again. Yet despite their success, the weight of what they had endured hung heavily on their shoulders. Captain Marcus Kane's sacrifice loomed large in their minds. Though he had survived his desperate stand against the Vorax swarm, barely, he was in no condition to celebrate. His suit was torn in several places, and his movements were sluggish, each stroke through the water costing him immense effort. When the others finally reached him, Ravi Patil immediately went to work, administering painkillers and patching up his wounds. "You're one stubborn son of a gun," Ravi muttered, trying to keep his tone light, despite the worry etched on his face. Marcus managed a weak smirk. "Had to make sure you guys didn't screw it up," he replied hoarsely. Elena Vasquez hovered nearby, her emotions a storm of relief and guilt. She had argued against Marcus staying behind, but deep down, she knew his actions had saved them all. "We couldn't have done this without you," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. Marcus waved her off with a dismissive grunt. "Save the speeches for later. Let's just get out of here." As they ascended toward the Violet settlement, the changes in the environment became increasingly apparent. Toxic plumes that had choked the waters were dissipating, and faint glimmers of color returned to the coral reefs below. Queen Silora greeted them at the edge of the dome, her translucent form glowing brighter than before. "You have done the impossible," she said, her melodic voice filled with awe. "Our world begins to heal because of your courage." But the celebration was short-lived. The crew gathered inside the Aegis, their exhaustion evident in every movement. Zara Lynn slumped into a chair, staring blankly at her tablet, while Jax leaned against a wall, absently cleaning his plasma pistol. No one spoke for a long moment. The silence was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Elena broke it. "This isn't over," she said firmly, looking around at her teammates. "The Vorax are disabled, but not destroyed. Their bodies are still scattered across the planet. If we leave them unchecked, there's a chance they could adapt again, or worse, spread elsewhere." Her words struck a nerve. Marcus frowned, wincing as he shifted in his seat. "So what do you suggest?" "We can't stay here forever. We clean up the mess," Elena replied. "With the Valeth's help, we can gather the remaining Vorax units and contain them. And then," she hesitated, choosing her next words carefully, "and then we find a way to ensure this never happens again, not to them, and not to anyone else." Zara nodded slowly, her mind already racing with ideas. "We could modify the disruptor device to create permanent containment fields," she suggested. "It'll take time, but it's possible." Jax raised an eyebrow. "Time we might not have," he pointed out. "What if another swarm shows up while we're playing janitor?" "Then we prepare," Marcus interjected, his voice steady despite his injuries. "Earth taught us how to survive against impossible odds. If we share what we've learned with the Valeth, and maybe even other species, we can build something stronger together." Ravi chimed in, his calm demeanor offering a sense of stability. This mission wasn't just about saving the Valeth. It was about proving that cooperation works. Maybe it's time we start thinking bigger, about alliances, about sharing knowledge, about protecting worlds instead of just our own. The idea resonated with everyone. For so long, humanity had viewed itself as isolated, struggling alone in a vast and hostile universe. But now, standing shoulder to shoulder with an alien species, they realized how much stronger they could be when they worked together. Queen Silora joined them shortly after, offering more than gratitude. She offered partnership. "Your ingenuity has given us hope," she said, Let us repay that hope by working alongside you. Together, we can restore balance, not just to our world, but to yours as well. By the time repairs to the Aegis were complete and plans for cleanup operations finalized, the crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had come to save the Vailith, but in doing so, they had discovered something far greater: the power of unity. As the ship prepared to depart, Alina looked out at the shimmering waters, now teeming with signs of recovery. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to herself, and for the first time in days, she truly believed it. As the crew prepared to leave the Vailith homeworld, Queen Silora approached them with a gift that would alter the course of their journey, and perhaps the future of both species. It came in the form of an ancient artifact, encased in a crystalline shell that shimmered faintly under the water's glow. "This is knowledge left behind by those who created the Vorax," she explained, her voice carrying both reverence and sorrow. "It contains technology and wisdom far beyond what we possess. Use it wisely." Dr. Elena Vasquez accepted the artifact with trembling hands, her mind racing at the implications. The data within could revolutionize Earth's understanding of science, medicine, and sustainability. But more importantly, it represented hope. A chance for humanity to address its own environmental crisis and foster unity among its fractured nations. For the first time in years, Alina felt optimistic about Earth's future. The decision to split up weighed heavily on the crew as they discussed their next steps aboard the Aegis. Zara Lynn surprised everyone by volunteering to stay behind. "I've always been better with machines than people," she admitted, fiddling nervously with a loose wire from her tablet. "But here, I feel like I can make a real difference. The Vailith need help rebuilding their world, and my skills could actually be useful." Ravi Patel hesitated before agreeing to join her. "If you're staying, so am I," he said firmly. "You'll need someone to keep an eye on your health, and maybe teach the Vailith a thing or two about medicine." His calm demeanor masked the depth of his commitment, but his eyes betrayed his determination. Together, they vowed to assist the Vailith in restoring their ecosystems, using the knowledge gained from the artifact to heal not just the planet, but also the wounds of its people. Jax, however, had no intention of settling down. "I didn't sign up for babysitting duty," he quipped, though his usual sarcasm lacked its edge. He glanced at Marcus Kane, who sat quietly in a corner, nursing his injuries. "Besides, Earth needs someone like me to shake things up. Someone who knows how to get things done. No offense, Doc." Alina smiled faintly, knowing Jax's bravado hid a deeper sense of responsibility. Despite his rough exterior, he understood the importance of bringing the artifact back to Earth. "Fine," she said, "but don't think this means you're off the hook. Humanity's going to need all the help it can get." Marcus remained silent during the discussion, his thoughts distant. When Alina asked if he planned to return home, he nodded slowly. "Someone has to remind Earth what we're capable of," he said gruffly. "Maybe seeing what we've done here will inspire them to do better. For themselves and for others." The farewell was bittersweet. As the Aegis ascended toward the stars, Alina and Jax watched through the viewport as Zara and Ravi waved goodbye, standing alongside Queen Silora and her people. Below them, the ocean sparkled with renewed life, a testament to the resilience of both the Vailith and their unlikely human allies. Back aboard the ship, Alina turned to Jax, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" she asked softly. Jax shrugged, leaning back in his chair. "Who knows? Space is big, and time moves funny out here. But one thing's for sure, they're gonna change the galaxy in ways we can't even imagine." Alina nodded, feeling a surge of pride. The mission had started as a desperate gamble, but it had evolved into something far greater, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of cooperation and hope. As the Aegis entered hyperspace, heading back toward Earth, Alina couldn't help but wonder what awaited them when they returned. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they squander the opportunity? For now, though, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The crew had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity and ingenuity could triumph. They had saved a dying world, forged an alliance with an alien species, and uncovered knowledge that could reshape the future. And as the stars streaked past the viewport, Alina whispered the silent promise to honor the sacrifices made, to share the lessons learned, and to ensure that the seeds of change they had planted would grow into something extraordinary. The journey home was just beginning. Years passed, and the story of the Aegis crew became legend. On Earth, humanity embraced the knowledge gifted by the Vaylith, using it to address some of its most pressing challenges. The ancient artifact revealed sustainable technologies that transformed cities into eco-friendly hubs powered by renewable energy. Deserts bloomed with life as advanced irrigation systems revitalized barren lands, while medical breakthroughs cured diseases once thought incurable. For the first time in centuries, Earth began to heal, not just its environment, but also the divisions among its people. The tale of how a ragtag team of misfits had saved an alien species inspired unity across nations. Governments set aside their differences, working together to implement the new technologies responsibly. Schools taught children about the bravery of Captain Marcus Kane, the ingenuity of Zara Lynn, and the compassion of Ravi Patil. Even Jax's cunning resourcefulness found its way into history books, portrayed as a reminder that unconventional thinking could lead to extraordinary outcomes. But the legacy extended far beyond Earth. Back on the Vaylith homeworld, Zara and Ravi worked tirelessly alongside Queen Silora and her people. Together, they rebuilt coral reefs, restored bioluminescent ecosystems, and developed methods to ensure the Vorax would never return. Zara flourished in her role, finding purpose in creating solutions for problems she never imagined before. Her awkwardness faded as she grew closer to the Vaylith, learning their language and culture. Ravi, meanwhile, trained Vaylith healers, blending human medicine with their natural remedies to create something entirely unique. Their efforts bore fruit not only in physical restoration, but also in fostering understanding between two vastly different species. The Vaylith came to see humans not as invaders or saviors, but as partners, flawed yet determined beings capable of great kindness. In turn, Zara and Ravi brought back stories of the Vaylith's harmony with nature, inspiring further change on Earth. Meanwhile, Alina Vasquez became a global ambassador for interstellar cooperation. She traveled the world, sharing the lessons learned from the mission and advocating for alliances with other civilizations. Her speeches often ended with the same refrain: "We are stronger together than we are apart." Under her guidance, Earth established its first formal diplomatic relations with alien species, laying the groundwork for a united galactic community. As for Jax, he disappeared shortly after returning home, leaving behind only rumors of his exploits. Some claimed he used his newfound fame to broker deals between planets. Others whispered he had become a smuggler again, this time trading secrets instead of goods. Whatever path he chose, one thing was certain: he remained true to himself, always finding ways to adapt and thrive. Though separated by light years, the crew stayed connected through messages carried by passing ships. Each update brought smiles and tears, reminders of the bonds forged during their journey. They had started as strangers bound by necessity, but they ended as family united by shared experiences. One evening, as Alina stood beneath a star-filled sky, she reflected on everything they had accomplished. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. It was part of something greater. And though challenges still lay ahead, she knew they could face them together. The stars above shone brighter than ever, symbols of hope and possibility. Somewhere out there, Zara and Ravi continued their work, while Marcus lived quietly, content in knowing he had made a difference. Jax roamed free, leaving ripples of change wherever he went. And Alina, she dreamed of new missions, new worlds to explore, and new friendships to forge. In the end, the story of the Aegis wasn't just about saving a species. It was about proving that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, light could shine through. It was a beacon of inspiration, reminding everyone who heard it that hope, courage, and unity could overcome any obstacle. And so, the legacy of the Deathworlders endured, a testament to the power of perseverance, compassion, and the belief that salvation could come from the unlikeliest of places.